is Laura. I'm here for our second round of Spooky Science this October. So there's 3 more to go. This is the second one we're doing. So if you did the first Spooky Science with us last week, you know that we dissected owl pellets, which was very fun, but also very kind of gross and creepy. We talked a little bit about how owls actually make those pellets, in part because that's just kind of part of how their digestion works. So this week, our Spooky Science is a little bit different. So we're still talking a little bit about digestion, but we're actually talking about our digestion. So this week, we called it Gross Guts because if you've ever seen or heard about Halloween food that's supposed to mimic guts or look like guts, there's a reason why. It's because they're kind of gross looking. Our stomachs, they're weird. So our stomachs are kind of almost like this little balloon. They sit inside us, sort of like inside our rib cage, like they would Mr. Bubbles over here. And they can expand and contract. They're a little bit slimy. They actually have like mucus inside of them and acids, all kinds of things. And our intestines, which are also part of the digestive digestive system, are sort of these series of squiggly tubes that almost look like worms. And if you were to stretch them all out, they could, just the small intestine, if you were to stretch it out like a jump rope, it could wrap around your body 3 times. But it's very, very thin, and it's all squiggled up and layered up on top of itself inside your stomach, so it almost looks like a squiggly worm. But they're not worms. The great thing about these worms is, for starters, 1, they're not worms. For seconders, 2, they are actually helping us to break down our food and to use it to have the energy we need to be able to kick a soccer ball or play the piano or hug our cat or whatever it is that you do. Our bodies can just burn through a wild amount of energy, even just having to wake up in the morning or be able to still breathe while you sleep. And so this is how our bodies make that energy from the food we eat. So this kit, start out like we did the last time with talking about what is in our kit. So what's in our kit is instructions. These are very important. Make sure you have these. We also have a baggie that has a little tube in it. This tube is filled with vinegar, and it should be taped up. So we've got it in the baggie just in case there's any kind of accident, but there shouldn't be, hopefully. There should also be a sponge. We'll get to that in a little bit. And it should also be kind of spiral cut. So, and then last but not least, there should be a bag with about 2 crackers inside. And that is it for this week. Now, things that you will need, in addition to these, you will need some water, and you will need a space to be able to work, just like what we've got here. But otherwise, you've got everything you need in this kit. And again, this video is just kind of meant to help you through if you get stuck, or if anything on these instructions is not making sense, and you think maybe watching somebody talk you through it can help you understand a little bit better. That's all this video is for. So I'm going to go ahead and have Mr. Bubbles take over the camera so that way I can show you how this demonstration is going to work. Okay, so step 1, always just going through your kit, making sure you've got everything. Okay, so we've got our baggie of crackers here, we've got our sponge, we've got our vinegar, And I went ahead and I grabbed myself some water and a spoon. Again, if you have a pipette, that's great, but a spoon is totally fine. Don't need any extra fancy equipment. So that's the first step. We're good there. Second step, take the bag of crackers and begin to crush them. So this actually mimics the first part of our digestion, believe it or not. This is where it all starts. And you probably have already guessed what this mimics. This mimics chewing. So our teeth are actually a really great first step. So unlike owls, we don't swallow our food whole. We chew our food. Very, very helpful for us. So that really helps everything get broken down a whole lot. Our teeth are very good at grinding and a little bit of tearing and chomping and mashing stuff up, which is great. So, okay, so that's looking pretty good, but I might be able to get it a little bit better. So the next step is to take 1 spoonful of water. You can do a little bit more actually, like 1 or 2, I would say. Enough to get your cracker mixture wet. And my spoon is rather small, and truly I'm kind of having a hard time with my bowl here. So I'm probably gonna do a couple more than a few spoonfuls. So just kind of, you can just kind of eyeball it, and I'll show you how it can look as well. But basically, you just kind of want enough to sort of coat all of the crumbled up cracker bits. And this is actually mimicking the saliva that we each create when we chew. So if you've ever noticed, sometimes your mouth maybe gets a little, you maybe have a little bit more spit, which is kind of gross to say, but if you've ever noticed, you know, your mouth kind of creates some saliva while you chomp on, maybe you chew some gum, bubble gum. That's why, because even though you're not going to swallow the bubble gum, your body thinks, oh hey, they're getting ready to start to digest stuff. So, okay, great, I'll send some saliva up to their mouth to coat all of the food that they're chomping on, so that way it can slide on down the esophagus. Bubblegum is a lot more recent than when our bodies started digesting food, so our bodies don't realize we have bubblegum instead. So, alright, that's looking pretty well mashed, and that's pretty well coated. So, the next step, I'm actually going to just do a little bit more. You can pour a little bit in. Ideally, you want it to be a little bit liquidy. Now, one thing I will say, it's of course not imperative that you drink water when you eat, but you can kind of see why a lot of people like to, right? And not only that, why it's always a good idea to drink lots of water and get lots of fluids and things, because where do we think our bodies make that saliva? Where does that saliva come from? We need water. We need lots of water. Our bodies are mostly water. So, okay, this is looking pretty darn liquidy. And you can open up your bag again. I recommend sealing your bag each time you add something to it and are going to mash it up again, just because, you know, it's the polite thing to do. It's like closing your mouth when you chew your food. All right, so really fun part next. We're going to add the vinegar. Now the vinegar, you may be wondering, most people don't just eat straight up vinegar, right? A lot of folks prefer it in a salad dressing or as sort of an accompaniment to food. And of course, for this purpose, the answer is of course, no, we don't really just usually drink straight up vinegar. But what we do have in our stomachs is some acid. And acid is actually what helps to break down our food even more. So this is looking very, very nicely like a mush. But our bodies need it broken down really, really fine. So that way we can absorb the nutrients and get all of the energy out of the food we eat. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take my vinegar and I am going to add it, drop it into my bag, and then seal up my bag again. And now I recommend smushing it all together again. And you will notice I accidentally, Mr. Bubbles got so excited he accidentally hit the off. But you will notice, and you probably can't see it too terribly well. Actually, you kind of can. There are some bubbles in there. And believe it or not, that actually happens inside your stomach as well. So you can kind of see this bag is actually filling up a little bit. Not too terribly much. But that happens inside your stomach as well. There's a little bit of tiny little air bubbles and things that go on in there. And there's the acid, of course, in there that is breaking stuff down. And all the while, you can keep mashing with your fingers. Just kind of be gentle because our stomachs, of course, are a lot stronger than these baggies. But our stomachs actually have muscles to kind of basically do this. Do what my fingers are doing to the baggie, which is to move the mixture around and mush things up even more. So now we come to a less fun part. We wait. So our bodies actually take a while to digest our food. So I recommend leaving it for probably at least about an hour. You can do it a little shorter. It won't do the next part quite as well. So it's up to you. You can even leave it, overnight or for a day if you want. Totally up to you, but for now, we just wait. Okay, so this is a baggie actually that I had prepared a little bit earlier and set aside. So you can see most of the bubbles have gone down now, even when I smush it up again. You can play with your bag a little bit when you let it sit. You can, if you play with it a little bit more, I'll show you. I play with it a little bit. This one that I had just put the vinegar in, it does bubble up again a little bit, not a whole lot when I play with it again. But this one, I'm not seeing that at all. So it really looks mostly like liquid hot. It almost looks, well, I don't want to say milk, but it kind of almost looks like a drink, right? So that's kind of what you want, actually. Especially for this next part, because we are going to take our sponge. So this sponge is spiral cut for a reason, because it's meant to mimic the small intestine, which is all kind of squiggled up on itself. And again, if you remember, the small intestine, it can fit into a smaller space, but if you stretched it all the way out, bloop, 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 it would be a lot longer. So in your instructions, you can see, and yours is going to look a lot better than mine because I didn't realize I was printing in black and white for this one. Yours will be in color, so you'll be able to see. There's this really cool chart that kind of shows the small intestine. See all those little squigglies, blue, all those little squigglies all on top of each other. So that's kind of what we're mimicking here with the sponge. So their main job is basically to like further break down a little bit of stuff, but also to absorb nutrients and things, so that way we can get the energy we need delivered all over the rest of the body. So again, that way you can do all the things that we like to do, which is to keep living mostly. Some days, it's just enough to help keep you warm on a chilly October day, right? So anyway, so this is going to go into our baggie, and this is going to mimic the final stop. The final step of our journey here. And so you may have noticed again, so there are steps here that take a while. For this next step, I also recommend letting it sit for a little while. Of course, you don't have to, but I think it helps things sink in a little bit more. So again, this is kind of helping the body absorb. And if you see, just take a look here just from a few minutes, how much of the liquid it's absorbed, how much of the liquid there really isn't in the bag now, and see if it'll absorb even more. You can also kind of see anything that wasn't previously broken down fully separates out. And so this happens as well, you know, whatever our bodies can't use gets kind of separated out. And that does not become energy. That becomes a trip to the restroom. So again, you can leave this for a little bit, and then come back and see what it looks like. That's pretty much it for the walkthrough. This one, it's pretty straightforward of a demo, but there's a lot of different things you can do with it. If you have crackers at home and baggies and other things, you could always try this with different kinds of acidic liquids. Soda's great actually for it, because soda is very high in acid. You can try and see kind of what that looks like. And you can see just how weird our bodies are. But you would never know, because they help us do all sorts of really great things, like be able to talk to each other and make videos so we can say hello and do some spooky science together. So that's about all I have. If you have questions or you see anything different or you notice something really cool, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to shoot us an email, or you can post something on our social media. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.